North America, 40,000 years ago. The sinewy youth stood transfixed amidst the grassy veldt beneath the clear blue sky. His long, knotted brown hair blew in the wind. A crude flint knife was tucked beneath the waist of his deerskin loincloth. Despite the hot summer sun beating down upon his bare skin, Anthro felt a chill run down his spine. Man, as the finely crafted seat hovered impossibly over the surrounding brush, Anthro knew that he was in the presence of a god.
I am Metron.
Ah! The words and language were unfamiliar to him, but their meaning was somehow clear. Although tempted to flee, he stood his ground. Metron gazed serenely upon the mortal youth.
Have no fear. Here is knowledge.
Oh, Kanake!
Anthro felt the heat of the flames upon his face and skin, and backed away warily.
Kesson?
Both the god and his starry throne had vanished, as though they had never existed. Anthro searched the horizon, which stretched out around him for as far as the eye could see, but spied no trace of the stranger. Anthro rubbed his eyes, half convinced that the god had been nothing more than a dream or vision. But then the wind shifted, blowing the smoke toward him. He approached the blaze cautiously, captivated by the dancing red and yellow flames. The light from the fire seemed to ignite something deep within him. He knew he should flee from the flames before they consumed him as well, but instead he stared at the burning bush in rapt fascination. New ideas and possibilities raced through his mind.
Sama confie.
The sounds thrilled the caveman's savage heart. Vandar Adge, undying leader of the Blood Tribe, led his men into battle against their enemies, who had been caught by surprise by the Twilight raid. He hammered his foes with the jawbone of a saber-tooth he had once killed with his bare hands. He took a moment to savor the carnage all around him. The Bear Tribe's peaceful camp, nestled in a wooden valley surrounded by rocky hills, was now the home of war. Despite the fading sunlight, he found it simple to tell the combatants apart. His own warriors looked like him. Their opponents were a newer breed of man, made Vandar Adge sneer in disgust just looking at them. Ageless and immortal, he was old enough to remember when the world had belonged to his own kind alone. He found it hard to believe that this race of weaklings had managed to survive at all, let alone that they now threatened to overrun the woods and plains, unless he wiped them all out. One plan after another. The world was too small for two breeds of man. Moving about in the fading sunlight, he spotted an aged warrior standing guard in front of a flimsy shelter made of stitched animal hides. An ornate necklace of polished shells and teeth marked him as Neon, the chieftain of the Bear Tribe. The skull of a mighty cave bear, the tribe's sacred totem, was mounted above the closed entrance of the tent behind him, warning that the spirit of the bear defended the shelter. But Vandar Adge feared neither beast nor spirit. He charged at the gray-haired chieftain. A younger warrior rushed between them, attempting to block the huge cannibal's path. But Vandar Adge snatched the sharpened spear from the man's grasp and kicked him brutally in the gut. The fighter toppled backward, clutching his stomach, and Vandar Adge speared him through the chest with his own weapon. Leaving the spear jutting from his victim's ribs, Vandar Adge stomped over the body on his way to confront Neon. To the honor of his ancestors, the old man showed no fear as he spied Vandar Adge heading toward him, bloody jawbone in hand. But he did glance back at the tent behind him. Vandar Adge wondered where he was hiding. The chieftain swung his axe at Vandar Adge, who ducked beneath the blow and grabbed onto the old man's throat with his free hand. He yanked Neon off his feet so that his legs dangled above the ground. Vandar's powerful fist squeezed tightly, crushing the chieftain's windpipe. The axe slipped from his fingers, and his bulging eyes glazed over. Vandar Adge strode forward toward the tent. He would add Neon's skull to his belt later. For now, the defenseless shelter called to him. The mounted bear skull bared its bony fangs, but he paid it no heed. Curious to discover just what Neon had been guarding, he put back a hanging flap of hide. A young female crouched anxiously inside the tent. Bloodlust gave way to a different sort of hunger. Despite his contempt for these flat-faced new men, he was developing a definite taste for their women. This one looked fresh and supple enough to bear him many healthy children. He reached for her. The keen edge of the flint knife in her hand plunged deep into his meaty chest. The blow might have killed a lesser man, but not Vandar Adge. Ever since he had first bathed in the eldritch light of a fallen star, countless ages ago, death had held no power over him. He had seen vast sheets of ice advance and retreat across whole oceans and continents over the course of his immeasurably long lifetime. Yet still he remained as invincible as ever. He smacked the girl across the face so hard that her teeth rattled, then seized a fistful of her hair and hauled her out of the tent. She kicked and struggled to get free as he dragged her through the dirt behind him. He saw that his men had all but conquered the weaker bear tribe. The mangled bodies of the new men were strewn about the camp. Most were dead, and the fallen warriors who weren't soon would be. As the wounded were put to death, others among the raiding party followed their leader's example by ransacking the ravaged camp for women and other trophies. Now was the time to enjoy the spoils of their victory. Tonight they would feast well on the flesh and marrow of the new men. Such was the way of the blood tribe. Again the female fought to escape him. Wrapping an arm around her waist, he slung her over his shoulder. Her tiny fists pounded uselessly against his back as she kicked and clawed and thrashed like an enraged saber-tooth. He admired her spirit. Breaking it would be a pleasure. Puzzled, he turned to see his men pointing at a stony ridge. A bright orange glow rose from behind the top of the ridge, as though the sun itself was creeping up on them. Vandar Adge blinked in confusion, while his men backed away in alarm. Both fear and hope showed upon the brutalized faces of their captives. A heartbeat later, the rising glare exposed the form of a youthful bear tribesman who stepped defiantly onto the crest of the hill.
Samarkand
Vandar Adge's jaw dropped. He could barely comprehend what he was seeing. Fire was a menace, set loose at times by lightning and angry gods, which all men feared and stayed far away from. He had witnessed many a wildfire over the ages, and been burned badly on occasion. But fire in the hands of man? A mere boy? This was something new. For the first time in millennia beyond counting, fear gripped the immortal's heart. He let go of the female. She scrambled away from Vandar Adge, who barely noticed. The youth gave Vandar Adge and his raiders no time to overcome their shock. The arm bearing the burning brand swept down, setting aflame the shrubs and grasses at the base of the ridge. To the caveman's horror, a wall of fire rushed toward them, consuming everything in its path. The glare from the conflagration turned twilight into day. Smoke blew against Vandar Adge's face. The scorching heat seared his skin, and he threw up his hands to shield his face from the sparks and flames. His men fled the camp in a panic, abandoning their captives, and ran for safety themselves. Vandar Adge hesitated only for a moment before joining the chaotic exodus. Glancing back over his shoulder, he caught one last glimpse of the nameless youth standing astride the barren ridge, gazing down implacably upon an inferno of his own creation. The fleeing immortal realized that he had underestimated these new men, the changes they were bringing. He vowed that he would not make that mistake again. The doomed camp went up in flames. Metropolis, now.
Fire was probably mankind's first big mistake. Like everything else, we take a good idea and use it to kill ourselves.
A balding bruiser of a man way past retirement, Dan Turpin ambled along the docks down by the waterfront. Formerly a member of Metropolis's elite special crimes unit, Turpin no longer carried a badge, but that didn't stop him from pounding the pavement as a private eye these days. He was 3 weeks out on the trail of 6 missing children, bright kids, gifted kids, who went out one day and never came home. At this late date, Turpin had little hope of finding the kids alive, but who knew? There was still a chance that one or more of the children might still be kicking. And if not, then whoever was responsible needed to get what was coming to them. His investigation led him to a deserted wharf adjacent to a rundown warehouse. Smoke rose from one of the crates, and an all-too-familiar smell.
Oh, hell.
Turpin squeezed through a ragged tear in the fence and headed toward the crate for a closer look. The top of it was smashed clean through, as though it had been struck by a falling meteor. Bracing himself for the sight of a child's torched remains, he stepped up onto the edge of a pallet and peered down.
What the hell?
Turpin found a battered figure sprawled atop boxes and boxes of cheap toy ray guns from China.
Just my luck. I go looking for some stolen kids, and I find a super muck-muck lying in the garbage.
He'd had his fair share of run-ins with costumed heroes and villains during his stint with the SEU. As far as he was concerned, most of them were nothing but trouble. It took him a moment to place a name to the demolished face before him.
Orion. One of those so-called new gods from outer space.
Turpin leaned over the edge of the crate and reached down to check for a pulse. Touching the god's blistered flesh had been like grabbing onto a red-hot coal. Orion sat up and seized Turpin's lapels with both hands.
Cracked and broken.
He dragged Turpin toward him until their faces were only inches apart.
You! Get your hands off of me!
But Orion's grip was too strong. Smoke rose where his fingers clung to the trench coat.
They did not die. He's in you all.
Orion let go of Turpin's coat. He toppled backward. Turpin could barely hear him.
Fight.
Turpin didn't need to risk scorching his fingers again to know that Orion had gone wherever new gods went when they kicked the bucket.
What the hell was he talking about? Who's in who again?
Turpin had seen plenty of bodies before, but a chill ran along his spine as he stared down at Orion's smoldering corpse. A sudden wind whipped up the litter around his feet, and a shadow passed over the grisly scene. Turpin glanced up to see what was blocking the sun. Just for a second, he thought he glimpsed an ominous figure hovering in the air high above the wharf.
What?
Turpin rubbed his eyes. When he looked again a heartbeat later, the surreal image had vanished, along with the mysterious shadow. Turpin scratched his hairless dome and wiped Orion's bloody spit from his face. Was it just his imagination? Or had there really been an armored what's-it skiing through the sky like some sort of alpine angel of death?
Like this crazy world isn't screwy enough.
Detroit. Although it had been bright and sunny only minutes before, a sudden storm transformed afternoon into twilight.
Hey, John, you have to check this out.
The 10th floor windows of Shining Light architecture offered a spectacular view of the tempest raging outside. John Stewart looked up from his drafting table to see his co-workers standing at the windows, gaping at the storm.
The weather's gone nuts.
Hold on a second.
John was distracted by a vibration on his right ring finger. There didn't appear to be a ring there, but appearances could be deceptive. He got up from the table and headed for a supply closet nearby.
I have a message coming in. Report.
Lantern Stewart, 2814.2. 1011 in progress. Municipality known as Metropolis.
1011? What the hell's a 1011?
Whatever it meant, it clearly demanded his attention. He turned the ring's light on himself, erasing his civilian attire to reveal the skin-tight green and black uniform underneath. Emblazoned on his chest was the insignia of the Green Lantern Corps, an interstellar police force composed of the bravest beings from thousands of different worlds and civilizations. John was one of 2 Earthmen assigned to this particular sector of space. He assumed that his partner had just gotten the same call.
Better get on the way.
One of the advantages of being the head of his own firm was that nobody could complain if he took long breaks and business trips without warning. A glowing emerald aura surrounded his uniformed body as he phased through the walls of the skyscraper and took off into the stormy sky outside. The driving rain vaporized against his protective force field as he flew east toward Metropolis at supersonic speed. Emerald light suffused his dark brown eyes as the ring converted his willpower into energy. His power ring, which matched the insignia on his chest, glowed brightly upon his finger.
My backup on the way yet?
Lantern Jordan 2814.1 has been alerted. His ring is not responding at this time.
As he soared through the turbulent winds and lightning, he was troubled to discover that the freak storm, which was getting worse by the moment, seemed to extend all the way from Detroit to the East Coast. Metropolis. A multi-lane suspension bridge overlooked the waterfront.
I'll let the space cops handle this. This is out of my league.
Sure enough, an emerald glow heralded the arrival of a Green Lantern, who came swooping down from the stormy sky toward the crime scene below. Turpin squinted, but couldn't make out which Green Lantern it was. There'd been at least 5 of them over the years, and I was just counting the humans. He couldn't keep track of them all.
We used to fight in the alleys. Guys these days fight in the clouds.
A woman wearing a fedora and a black leather jacket joined him on the walkway.
Progress?
You tell me. Wait, didn't the Question used to be a guy?
Lung cancer. From smoking.
Lightweight.
The Question's body stiffened, and he could practically feel her glaring at him from somewhere behind her featureless visage.
Sorry.
Turpin tossed the cigarette onto the pavement and ground it out beneath his heel.
What you got for me?
A question, you ignorant old fart. What did your 6 have in common, apart from being poor and smart? Any evidence of metagene activity, for instance?
Metagene?
Turpin was no scientist, but he knew that was supposed to be the genetic marker responsible for giving certain people superpowers under the right circumstances. Like when they were exposed to weird chemicals or radioactive meteors or whatever. At least, that was the theory.
As far as I know, none of the missing kids are future candidates for the Teen Titans or anything. They're bright kids, sure, maybe even prodigies, but they don't fly or walk through walls or anything like that.
Somebody's targeting metahumans. I keep turning up links to this place.
She fished a postcard out of her jacket pocket and handed it to Turpin.
You be careful in the shadows, Danny boy.
Why are you helping me anyway?
The Question just vaulted over the guardrail.
Hey!
He leaned over the rail, fearing that she had jumped to her death.
Holy...
Only to see her land nimbly on the roof of a warehouse several feet below. She darted across the rooftop, then dropped out of sight. Turpin scanned the docks, but didn't catch another glimpse of her.
Damn super muck-mucks.
He examined the card she'd given him. It turned out to be an ad for some sort of trendy night spot called the Darkseid Club. The name of the club was printed in ornate white Gothic type against a stark black background.
Members only. Guess I'm heading to the Big Apple.
A dome of emerald energy protected the crime scene from the elements.
Here's the man.
He peered up through the dome to see his partner Hal Jordan descending from the sky. Hal phased through the energy dome to join John on the wharf.
What kept you, flyboy? Blonde or redhead?
Deep and dreamless. What's the story?
Cooling rapidly.
John scanned the battle-scarred body lying amidst the ruins of a shattered crate, but his ring detected no signs of life.
You ever hear of a 1011 before? Apparently it doesn't happen often.
1011? Deicide?
Nice pull. That's right. Somebody just murdered a god on our watch.
John stepped aside to give Hal a better view of the corpse.
You recognize him?
Orion. The warrior god of New Genesis. A#1 cosmic hard-ass.
Yep. I don't want to think about what could have done this to somebody like Orion.
Unfortunately, that's our job. I'll report to the Guardians on Oa. You alert the Justice League. This is Lantern Jordan, 2814.1, requesting direct contact with the Guardians.
What is your report?
I have a positive ID on the victim of the 1011. It's Orion of New Genesis.
Seal the crime scene to the planet's Lagrange point. No one must enter or leave the gravity well.
Dust for radiation prints. Interrogate all potential suspects. 1011 requires a vast energy expenditure. Locate the weapon.
This is a matter of utmost concern. Lantern Jordan 2814.1. The gods of New Genesis and Apocalypse have long been locked in a stalemate. The death of Orion suggests that the balance of power may have shifted toward evil. The Special Operations Alpha Lantern Unit is on its way. Prepare to receive them.
Special Operations?
The Guardian's images blinked out of existence as they terminated the transmission. John and Hal shared a worried look. If even the Guardians were going into crisis mode, just how hairy was this going to get?
You know, these new gods, they come with bad gods, too.
Metropolis. The Baker Line Municipal Landfill was located in the outer boroughs of the city. Despite the fancy name, the place was still just a garbage dump.
Hip-hop spot!
The armored heroine who called herself Empress raced up the side of a massive trash pile.
It's just over this way! I'm coming! Ha! There it is!
Sparks caught up with Empress at the crest of the heap.
Whoa.
Where her flashing eyes immediately zoomed in on a futuristic throne half buried in the surrounding refuse.
You believe me now? The visions told me we'd find it here.
But if it's literally from another world, a higher reality, I mean, this is a totally major launch for the League of Titans. Come on, Mas Menos! Woohoo! Go, League of Titans!
Sí, podemos!
Then, without warning, it all went wrong. A sinister figure, who Sparks immediately recognized as Dr. Light, rose from behind the Mobius chair.
Watch out, it's a trap!
But it was already too late. Before she could fire an electrical blast, a pair of laser beams shot from Dr. Light's upraised palms. The rays bounced off the mirrors, strategically scattered around the chair. Sparks knew that Empress had been hit as well, but could do nothing but writhe atop the trash in utter agony. Dr. Light stepped out from behind the Mobius chair.
Ah, the first unsuspecting victims of the blindingly obvious team of Dr. Light and Mirror Master.
Mirror Master?
Mirror images of another villain emerged from a pair of propped-up Venetian mirrors, like Alice stepping through the looking glass.
Aye, that was pure dead brilliance. The Aegis didn't see us coming.
To her dismay, she saw that Mas Menos had fallen victim to the villain's ambush as well. Each version of Mirror Master tossed one of the twins onto the ground.
Gad, they're asking for it in these outfits.
Aye, all right.
Both Mirror Masters stepped through one mirror and came out another as a single being.
Well, not a bad time, but let's keep our heads in the game. What's this piece of junk for, anyway?
Something Libra wants.
Sparks didn't know that name. Through blurry eyes, she watched the two finish arranging a ring of mirrors facing the chair.
Look here, McCulloch. I was having a word with the Reverse Flash earlier, and he implied that you were the sort of man who might be able to lay your hands on certain, pharmaceutical requisites.
Aye, what you wantin'? I got a wee bitty Peruvian flake that'll straighten out the fin on your head, nae bother.
No! Do I look like some pathetic junkie? If you must know, I have a date with Giganta. And, well, Arthur Light never likes to let a lady down, especially one of such intimidating proportions.
Giganta? The monster woman?
Oh, good God, enough! Or I'm never teaming up with you again! How about we just finish teleporting the chair to Libra and keep our personal lives personal?
Lying on the ground nearby, Sparks found the entire conversation skeevy in the extreme, but at least it kept them from noticing that she wasn't out cold like the rest of her team. Her head was throbbing and her limbs still felt like overcooked spaghetti, but she gritted her teeth and tried to focus past the pain. The mirrors focused multiple beams of light onto the throne, causing it to levitate up out of the trash. Dr. Light adjusted the controls on his belt, and the beams grew bright enough to make Sparks' eyes water. Faint blue sparks sputtered around her fingertips. Just a few more seconds. The chair began to shimmer like a mirage. Sparks had no idea who this Libra was, or what he needed the chair for, but she knew she had to stop this if she could. Biting down on her lips to keep from gasping, she painfully hoisted herself up onto her hands and knees. She crawled stealthily toward Dr. Light until she was only a few feet away from him. If she was lucky, she might even have a little juice left over for Mirror Master. Her fingers flared brightly.
We're working for Libra now.
Dr. Light spun around, and the insulated sole of a white rubber boot ground Sparks' face into the trash. The coppery taste of blood filled her mouth before she blacked out.
And what Libra wants, Libra gets.
The Mobius chair was gone. Keystone City.
Call me Libra. I balance the scales. I even the odds.
The stranger stood at the end of a long rectangular conference table in the back room of an abandoned strip club in the bad part of town.
Now, let's face it. The secret society of supervillains is a toothless shadow of its former glory. Despite your individual talents, you folks have been through hell. Time and again you've been defeated, demoralized, and humiliated. But I'm here to help you change all that. Because make no mistake, there is a God. A new God, in whose unholy name the bad men can offer up their prayers. And he will answer. And here is his book.
Libra slapped his palm down atop a massive leather-bound tome resting on the table before him.
Here is the great news! You want a hero kill? We can do it. You want better powers? Sign on the dotted line and they're yours. Believe in him. That's all he asks. And that, my friends, is only the beginning of my bid for leadership of this august organization. Do I hear a hallelujah?
I've heard your stump speech before.
Lex Luthor rose to his feet at the opposite end of the table.
I'm still not impressed. You may have dazzled the rank and file with your overblown oratory, but the rest of us? Do we look like the sort of people who'd be inclined to follow orders?
Seated around the table was, with one notable exception, the elite of the super-criminal community.
Luthor's right. You invite us to some deserted flesh pot in the heart of Flash territory, then expect us to hand over the reins of the secret society? We are organized supercrime specialists.
I don't want to take your place at all. But, please, excuse me. People have been waiting 50,000 years for Vandar Ed to crush civilization beneath his boot heel.
Take care! I am not averse to the taste of human flesh, sir.
Spoken like a true gentleman. Who says I'm human, anyway? It strikes me that your enemies fight and win again and again because they truly believe their actions are in accordance with a higher moral order. But what happens in a world where good has lost its perpetual struggle against evil? In return for your participation in my grand experiment, I can absolutely guarantee each and every one of you your heart's desire. How's that sound?
My heart's desire? I don't imagine that is within your power to deliver.
What do you want me to say, Lex? Mike here believes in me. He wants the Manhunter from Mars dead just as much as you dream of dancing on Superman's grave.
You imagine this half-wit, this non-entity's hate matches mine? You presume I have no creed? My creed is Luthor.
Hey, Mr. Luthor, you don't understand. Libra's serious. He's the real deal.
I've heard enough.
Don't leave, Lex! Can't we murderers, madmen, and masterminds work in harmony just this once to achieve something none of us ever has before?
Luthor paused and looked back at the table. As much as he hated to admit it, he was more than a little curious as to Libra's true identity and motives. Despite his best efforts, he had been able to uncover frustratingly little information regarding the hooded interloper. Unconfirmed reports suggested that Libra, or someone employing the same alias, had once tangled with the Justice League many years ago, but beyond that, the stranger's file was far too skimpy for Luther's liking.
What's in it for you?
An end to the age of superheroes.
Right.
A full-on, no kidding, Twilight of the Gods. That ambitious enough for you?
He beckoned with his staff, and right on cue, 2 more villains entered the chamber via a side door, dragging a battered-looking prisoner between them. Luther immediately recognized the newcomers as Dr. Light and Effigy. The latter was an unstable juvenile delinquent who had been endowed with pyrokinetic abilities by some meddlesome aliens. Luther felt the temperature in the room rise dramatically. What startled him was the identity of their captive. John Jones, the Martian Manhunter, slumped between the 2 villains.
He's still groggy from the pyro tranquilizers.
Keep him that way.
Placing the crime Bible safely back onto the table, Libra hefted his staff with both hands. The flaming spear tip was poised to strike.
I'd hate to take this one on in a fair fight.
His captor shoved him down onto his knees in front of Libra.
Holy crap! Can everybody see this?
Mike aimed his camera phone.
This, friends and neighbors, is what happens to anybody who messes with the human flame!
Amen.
Libra drove his burning spear deep through the Martian Manhunter's back. Spreading flames ignited his alien flesh and costume. Overwhelmed with agony, through the flames engulfing him, the last Martian saw the face of his long-lost bride.
All right. You have my attention.
New York City.
Dead city. A suppurating wound on the flank of an idle nation. My heart goes out to the suffering citizens of benighted Bloodhaven. Another year gone, and not one day closer to salvation. Make no mistake, the message rings clear. If you're poor, if you're homeless, you can wrestle the mutations out of your own backyard. It's just another...
Shut your trap.
The bartender muted the sound on the large flat-screen television set mounted beneath the ceiling of the smoky downtown tavern.
Yes, me. That stinking city had it coming.
Maybe.
You Turpin?
Turpin spun around on his stool to find the tattooed man standing behind him.
About time you got here.
Not here. Outside.
Works for me.
Turpin followed him out the exit and lit himself a fresh cigarette.
All right. Let's get this over with, bud.
I ain't your bud. Call me that again, and you'll be chowing down on your last best hope of fathering an heir to the tattooed man's fortune.
Whatever.
Richards guided Turpin through the Bowery to their destination.
So, you know much about what goes at the Darkseid Club?
In theory, the tattooed man had pulled strings to get Turpin a face-to-face with the big shot running the mysterious night spot.
Let me guess. Something sad and stupid with whips and leather.
You'll see.
They arrived at the address in question, which belonged to a converted brownstone at the corner of Morrison and A Street. No sign gave away the name of the club. The only identifying mark was a symbol inscribed over a pair of heavy double doors. It took Turpin a second to place the icon as the Greek letter Omega. Heavy iron bars guarded the windows, and closed metal shutters hid whatever was going on inside. Unsavory characters loitered on the sidewalk in front of the building, eyeing Turpin suspiciously. A pair of thuggish bouncers flanked the entrance to the club. One of them was a stony-faced bruiser with greasy brown dreadlocks and muscles that positively screamed steroid abuse. His companion was a slightly leaner blonde guy wearing a tight white t-shirt and khaki trousers. Both men brandished heavy wooden baseball bats. Neither of them looked like sports fans.
Here's the guy I told you about. You're on your own now, old man. I'm done here.
Yeah, go get another pretty picture stitched on your butt. A butterfly, maybe, or a unicorn.
Richard shot him a dirty look before disappearing back into the grungy back alleys of the Bowery. Turpin wasn't sorry to see him go. He got what he'd wanted from the reputed hitman. Access to the exclusive milieu of the Darkseid Club. The rest was up to him.
Well, girls, you heard the man. Take me to your leader.
Wordlessly, the goons opened the door and escorted him inside. Dim lighting obscured Turpin's view of the club's interior. Matte black paint coated the walls, soaking up what little illumination leaked from the black velvet curtained doorways opening up off the foyer. A coat-check girl wearing a ribbed corset and a black latex bondage mask approached. Her bare arms and cleavage had a peculiar plastic sheen.
May I take your coat?
No thanks.
Turpin wondered whom Darkseid had paid off to keep this joint from being raided. His sullen escorts led him up a spiral staircase to a private lounge on the top floor, where he found their boss seated on a leather couch behind a low felt-covered coffee table.
Ah, there you are. Tell me, Mr. Turpin, how we met?
Not that the detective knew of, although something about the seated club owner seemed oddly familiar.
Call the goons off. I'm an old man. These guys would hate to have their asses handed to them by an old man.
Calabac, Tanto, outside.
The bouncers reluctantly exited the lounge, leaving Turpin alone with the club owner. He squinted at the other man.
Boss Darkseid, huh?
Now that his eyes were adjusting to the gloomy lighting, he could tell that the other man was in pretty bad shape.
Guess I expected someone younger.
Boss Darkseid rose unsteadily to his feet, leaning upon his cane.
Bodies, they wear out quickly here. Mortal flesh, oxidizing in the combustion of time.
He dabbed at his brow with a silk handkerchief.
And me, I was hurt in a fall, you might say. But it's what we endure that makes us strong, don't you think?
My father used to say the same thing. So, you want to tell me how come the trail of my missing kids leads right to you?
Oh, how could it not?
He limped out from behind the table until he and Turpin were only inches apart.
As for the children, I gave them to Granny.
Who?
Humanity's best hope for the future. It's young, I mean. It's life force.
He removed his glasses, revealing searing red eyes.
There was a war in heaven, and I won. Your future belongs to me now.
What? What did you do to those kids, you sick bastard?
Turpin grabbed onto Darkseid's shoulder and drew back his fist.
Remove your hand.
Darkseid seized Turpin's wrist, squeezing it so hard the bones scraped against each other. With shocking strength, the crippled crime boss removed Turpin's hand from his shoulder, without releasing his grip.
We taught him to say to your creation how to be stunted, malformed slaves.
He dragged Turpin across the room toward the velvet curtains.
Come closer, Turpin. I can use you.
He forced the detective to the ground before finally letting go. Prostrate on the carpet, Turpin clutched his injured wrist, which was already turning black and blue.
There. It's best that you see the new model human. From your knees.
Boss Darkseid drew back the drapes. The missing children shambled out into the murky light. Turpin barely recognized them. Horrible dead eyes gazed out from pallid, pasty faces, and pointed teeth peeked out from between their lips. Drool dripped down their chins as they shuffled toward Turpin.
My God. Indeed. Come, children. Show him what you have learned about anti-life.
Washington, D.C. Inside the Hall of Justice, situated on the Capitol's grassy mall not far from the Lincoln Memorial, the world's greatest heroes held an emergency meeting.
As most of you know, the new gods are a race of warring alien deities from the far end of the universe. The good gods, such as Orion, dwell on the distant world of New Genesis, while their evil counterparts rule over the desolate planet Apocalypse. The fact that even the Guardians of the Universe are taking this matter very seriously ought to give you some indication of the power levels we're dealing with here.
Evil gods, evil people. Different universe, same dumb.
Batman slid a folder across the table.
I've prepared a detailed dossier for those of you who haven't encountered these beings before.
Unfortunately, Orion's death suggests things have escalated to a whole new level. The prophecies of the new gods always foretold that Orion would die in the final battle between New Genesis and Apocalypse. The discovery of his body raises the possibility that such a battle has begun, or has already been lost.
If the evil gods have been reborn on Earth, it's imperative that we find them before they strike.
Agreed, Wonder Woman. These are Celestials, capable of cracking the planet in half and enslaving billions. Justice League Condition Amber.
Earth, Sector 2814. 300 miles above the spinning blue planet, 4 Alpha Lanterns placed Earth under quarantine. The leader of the squadron reported back to the Guardians on Oa.
This is Alpha Lantern Kraken. Crime scene secured.
The Citadel of Nil, Nexus of Realities.
Behold, New Earth, the foundation stone of all existence, the prime element of the multiversal orrery that sustains us all.
Hermuse and his fellow monitors watched from afar as the Alpha Lanterns complete their work.
New Earth is secure. The bleed drains are intact.
His gaze shifted to a disturbing gap in the helix.
The orrery has survived repair after suffering the loss of moving part Earth 51. Excellent news.
Roxogama stood beside Hermuse on the platform.
But what of young Wotan? I hear he is to face absolute sanction for his failure. When did we become so severe? Such are the times. But that is for the High Council to decide, and the rest of us to bear witness to.
Dozens of monitors gathered in the main auditorium.
Perhaps it is not too late. Perhaps the Council will show mercy.
The lights dimmed.
Nix Wotan, your failure shames us all.
A mysterious plague, possibly imported from another continuum, had all but destroyed all life on Earth 51, at the same time that Nix had been lured away from his duties by an apparent threat to the multiverse. By the time he'd returned to his Earth, the damage had been done.
Not since Mandrak, the Fallen One, was cast down into darkness, has a monitor so betrayed his trust.
The name of the Dark One elicited a shudder from the assembly.
There is only one punishment for a monitor whose negligence endangers the orrery of worlds.
The destruction of Earth 51 was beyond my power to avert. Malign forces from beyond my universe conspired against me. I suspect sabotage.
The sentence is exile. You will be stripped of your duties and powers and word of attention. You shall live out your days as a mortal germ and die to feed the orrery.
Roxogama, monitor of Earth 31, rose to speak.
But consider his youth, Prime Monitor.
His inexperience will not restore Earth 51 to the orrery, Roxogama. We cannot risk his carelessness endangering another universe in our care. The sentence stands.
No! It's not his fault! Others took advantage of his heroic nature!
Silence, Weejadel! We are the monitors, ancient and wise. Our wisdom is beyond question.
A holographic display panel materialized above the lectern. Moving swiftly to carry out the sentence, Tahote manipulated the controls.
I'll find a way back to you. Need to tell. I promise I'll find a way.
Justice is done. May the orrery endure.
I can't be part of this.
Ouija shoved past her fellow monitors and stumbled out of the gallery, desperate to get as far from the auditorium as possible. She ran blindly through the corridors of the Citadel until she came at last to a high balcony overlooking the sullen copper sea. Ouija collapsed against the cracked marble ramparts, on the verge of throwing herself over the edge. Only a profound sense of duty stayed her. If she took her life, who would look after the universe in her care?
Ouija, wait!
An older monitrix caught up with her on the balcony.
But why? Nyx tried to save the orrery, not harm it. Others plotted against him. Why would no one listen to him? And why do I care so much?
Listen to me, Ouija. We monitors were faceless once, when the multiverse was young and every Earth was identical. But as their histories diverged, so did our separate paths and identities. We now have names and stories. There are heroes and villains, secrets and lovers.
It's true. I never felt anything before. Now I'm crying. What has become of us?
Ogama fears we have become contaminated by contact with the obscure life forms that grow within the workings of the orrery. Through them, time has entered our timeless realm. Beginnings and endings.
What shall become of us then, sister? How can I endure this?
Consider our divine engine, our celestial fountain of interlocking universes. All existence depends on its survival.
Zilovala placed a comforting hand upon Ouija's shoulder.
Save your love for the orrery.
Unseen by either woman, Roxogama spied on the tender scene from the shadows of an arched doorway. He lifted to his lips the built-in communicator of his gauntlet.
Attentions wander. Nyx Wotan, our only obstacle, is gone. All is proceeding according to plan. We're on.
Metropolis, Earth 0. At first, he couldn't even remember who he was. Nyx Houston sat upright in his bed, confused and disoriented. The lanky black teenager massaged his aching scalp, feeling his scruffy black mohawk beneath his fingers, as he groggily awoke to the reality of his cheap rented digs in Queensland Park.
Oh, man.
As he blinked the sleep from his bleary eyes, bits and pieces of a half-forgotten dream clung to his consciousness. There had been a giant machine the size of a church steeple, like a complicated clockwork mechanism, but with spinning blue globes instead of gears. And a girl. Hadn't there been a girl? With sad green eyes and braided black hair? If he concentrated, he could almost see her face. When he focused, he saw the clock radio.
9:15? I thought I said for 8:15. Oh, man, I am in such deep... What?
His gaze fell on his own hands. They looked wrong somehow, as though he had never seen them before. He tried to shake it off.
If I don't move it, I'm going to be late for work.
The uncarpeted floor felt reassuringly solid beneath his bare feet. He reached for the remote on the bedstand. Maybe a dose of the morning news would snap him back to reality.
The tragic death of the Martian Manhunter.
That's Black Canary.
The League is devastated by this loss. John was a valued friend and comrade.
Screw that! Whoever did this to John will suffer. You hear me? They will suffer!
An understandably overwrought Green Arrow in front of JLA headquarters in Washington, D.C., as the superhero community reacts to the horrific murder of John Jones, the hero the public has come to know as the Manhunter from Mars. More after the break.
First Orion, now this. What the hell is this world coming to?
North America, 40,000 years ago. The sun was sinking into the sea as Anthro knelt upon the sandy beach. A bird roasted upon a spit above a nearby campfire, but the youth ignored the rumbling of his stomach. His bow and arrows leaned against a piece of driftwood. Many moons had passed since the mysterious god had taught him the use of fire. Yet new ideas and discoveries constantly filled Anthro's mind. Many nights as he lay in his tent beside his mate Embra, the racing of his thoughts kept sleep at bay. Since their chieftain's death, the bear tribe had looked to Anthro's strength and cunning to keep them safe and fed. But at times, the youth had to go off by himself to be alone with the clamorous notions crowding his skull. When he returned from one of these hunting trips, he often brought back more than just fresh game. Sometimes he had found another way to make all their lives easier. Many of the tribe now held him in awe. Some even called him shaman. Lost in a trance, he used a pointed stick to trace a pattern in the sand. He let his restless spirit guide his fingers. Not until he finished the sketch did he recognize it as the same pattern that had marked the god's shining visage. He wondered what magic the rune held. A brilliant glare lit up the beach, and Anthro looked up. The sun, which had been sinking to his left only heartbeats before, was now rising to his right. That was not all that had changed. His eyes widened in fear and wonder as he saw that the familiar coastline had been replaced by a startling new vision. A colossal female idol, many times the size of any man or beast, lay partly buried beneath blackened mounds of ashy debris. Her pitted skin and garments were fashioned from a slick, hard substance that Anthro had never seen before. Her right arm held aloft the lightness of a burning torch, while her other arm cradled an immense tablet bearing strange, indecipherable markings. Spikes radiated from her crown. A greenish patina hinted at ages of neglect and decay. Her towering form had tilted halfway over, so that it threatened to come crashing down onto the scorched and lifeless rubble below her. In the distance, beyond the broken idol, Anthro glimpsed a baffling view of what he could only guess was an abandoned campsite of the gods. Gigantic structures rose, composed of the same weathered substance as the huge idol, before a smoky black dawn. Their twisted skeletons and gaping wounds suggested that some terrible cataclysm, such as a raging forest fire or angry volcano, had befallen the heavenly campsite. A hot wind blew smoke and ash against Anthro's face. A blonde-haired youth ran out from the shadow of the toppled goddess. Instead of a loincloth or skins, a short garment of woven blue fabric covered his loins and upper thighs, and a leather pouch was belted to his waist. His bare chest and arms were deeply tanned. He looked no older than Anthro himself.
Metron gave you a weapon against the gods! We need it now!
This was a language Anthro had never heard before, yet somehow he understood.
Metron?
The youth reached out to Anthro, who instinctively extended his own hand. Desperate blue eyes searched Anthro's face for the answer to a question Anthro couldn't begin to comprehend. All he knew was that whatever the other boy needed, it was a matter of life and death. Their fingers stretched toward each other, only instants away from touching. Disoriented, Anthro found himself back in the fading twilight of the lonely beach. He looked all around him, but the running boy, the giant idol, and the distant wasteland had all vanished from sight. It was sunset once more, and he smelled his meal burning. For a moment he thought that perhaps he had simply woken from a strange and perplexing dream. But when he brought his hand to his face, he felt a coating of heavy gray ash upon his skin. It had been an omen, perhaps even a warning from the gods, and the blonde-haired boy had been their messenger. Anthro did not know what the vision meant, but he knew he had to be prepared. His finger moved across his face, tracing the mask of Metron upon his own thoughtful features. He prayed that the sacred markings would protect him and his people from whatever lay ahead. Tokyo, now.
The monster Fushikoraje was old and tired, but his efforts to reach the monster's graveyard beneath Mount Fuji left the city in ruins.
Rising Sun, the middle-aged Japanese superhero, sat behind a desk on the set of his eponymous talk show.
Luckily for us all, in my day we rolled up our sleeves and got the job done.
On the screen behind him, his younger self, glowing with harnessed solar energy, was joined by a coterie of heroic figures as a gigantic tentacled monster rampaged through the city streets.
my day, Ultimon, Hammersuit, Cosmo Racer, Junior Waveman, and the other noble champions of big science action earned their status as Japanese heroes. Not like today. When have any of these new young wasters ever faced a monster bent on turning all of Tokyo into a radioactive toilet? Tell me that.
Action Comics was the hottest new night spot in Shibuya, catering to the young, the hip, and the impossibly glamorous. Rising Sun's indignant features filled a wall-sized plasma TV screen.
What do they ever do except lounge around in their trendy nightclubs, drinking cocktails and smoking? Superheroes? Posers, I say.
That's you, Heino. He's talking about you.
Big Atomic Lantern Boy hung out with his friends in a roped-off VIP lounge overlooking the main floor.
Rising Sun is a stupid old man.
What does he know about us anyway? I once saved the life of an injured porpoise.
Japan has always had a proud tradition of superheroism, with special distinction in the field of monster hunting. But these feckless youngsters make a laughingstock of us all. It shames us that the noble calling of superhero has become nothing more than a gimmick.
All my life, I've wanted to be a gimmick. The transformation of man into merchandise. Spirit into toy. When will he realize that being fantastic is a superpower in itself? Something will happen to put Super Young Team on the map. We'll show him. We'll save the world our own way.
Superbat initially failed to notice that his companions, and indeed the entire club, were no longer paying attention to him. He looked up from his drink to discover that all eyes had turned toward a newcomer who had just entered the club. Wide-eyed teens, both superpowered and otherwise, gazed in awe at a massively muscled older man wearing only slacks, sandals, and a plain black t-shirt.
OMG! Sunny Sumo-san! We are not worthy!
The legendary wrestler strode toward the bar, ignoring the tumult his unexpected appearance had generated.
Water, ice in a tall glass.
Yes, sir.
The bartender looked up in alarm. A towering robotic samurai forced its way through the crowd to come up behind Sunny.
Sunny Sumo! Mega Yakuza challenges you! Did you hear me, Sunny Sumo?
I fight for money. Can I get a refill? Talk to my manager. Maybe you'll get a chance to face me in the ring, where there are rules to prevent me from killing you. Take my advice, friend. Don't provoke me.
I am not your friend. I am Mega Yakuza.
His t-shirt went up in flames, while the bartender frantically hustled the nearest liquor bottles away from the fire. Sunny's exposed skin blackened and blistered. Sunny calmly drained his glass dry. Bayonet attachments folded into offensive positions from latched compartments in Mega Yakuza's forearms.
Now will you face me, coward?
With blinding speed, Sunny spun around.
What do I?
And drove the empty glass right through Mega Yakuza's armored chest and out his back. Sunny yanked back his arm. He placed the cracked glass back on the bar. No longer empty, it now contained a pulpy purple heart that appeared to be half organic, half mechanical. Superbat and his fellow celebrities could only watch agape as Sunny stepped over Mega Yakuza's lifeless remains and headed for the men's room. A handful of startled teenagers, who had missed out on the excitement, looked up in surprise at the sight of the scorched and smoking sumo champion.
Beat it!
The young man hastily departed. Over in the VIP lounge, Superbat overcame his dumbfounded amazement.
Atomic Lantern Boy, you go, get his autograph.
Just say it's for your sister, but she doesn't dare go into the men's toilets.
Sunny's back stung like hell. Leaning over a porcelain sink, He splashed cold water onto his face and shoulders. A mirror above the sink reflected his pained, world-weary expression.
All I wanted was a night out. Was that too much to ask?
Excuse me, Super Sumo-san, autograph?
Maybe another time.
It's not for me. My sister has...
Another time! Didn't you hear me? I said out!
But when Sonny looked in the mirror, he saw that the footsteps belonged not to the sheepish autograph hound, but to a confident-looking black man in a natty white suit.
Sonny Sumo. My name is Shiloh Norman. On stage, they call me Mr. Miracle.
Right. The escape artist.
He hadn't recognized the man out of his garish circus costume. The noise seemed to emanate from beneath the American's tailored jacket. A strange tingling sensation rushed over Sonny's smarting skin as his blistered flesh healed instantaneously. He lifted a hand to his face and felt smooth, unblemished skin.
That sound. I know that sound. And my skin.
Mother Box led me to you. She's about the only thing left after the war, see? There was a cosmic war, and the powers of evil won.
What?
I know how this sounds, but can't you feel how the world has changed? They're here, among us now.
Shiloh read the confusion on Sonny's face.
I was kind of hoping you might be able to help me put some kind of team together.
Glancing over at the door, Sonny saw that the youth had returned, joined by a handful of equally wide-eyed friends.
Does this count as another time?
Metropolis.
Bedded, better, bedevil, bedew, bedfast, bedfellow.
Nick Houston paged through a paperback dictionary, reciting each word one by one.
Hey, Nick.
A blonde girl in a matching uniform slid into the booth across from him.
Me and Shirley were just talking about dreams and stuff. Do you ever dream in color?
Every night. And the colors always seem brighter, purer than they are in real life. But strange and weird, too. Like last night, I was being judged by these super people who built this machine made out of parallel universes. And they sentenced me to some kind of exile here on Earth. And that's when I woke up.
Whatever. You're such a stoner.
Not really. Sometimes I just feel like I belong somewhere else, that's all.
He flipped the pages of his dictionary.
Like one day I'm gonna find the magic word that will take me home.
Just remember, your break's over in 5 minutes.
There's gotta be more to life than this.
Nick went back to his dictionary.
Bedford, bed frame, bedite, bedin.
Gotham City. The Mad Hatter was a mess. The dwarfish villain was sprawled on the carpet of the seedy rented apartment that served as his current headquarters.
That was me, asking nicely.
Turpin couldn't remember precisely how he'd gotten here. He'd been having trouble with blackouts lately, but the Hatter had obviously fallen on hard times since escaping from Arkham Asylum a few weeks back. Turpin grabbed the man's lapels and hauled him up onto his knees.
Please, stop hitting me! I only made the prototypes! The mind control hats! I don't know where they took the children! I don't!
Liar!
His knee came up to meet the Hatter's face.
You're gonna tell me where those kids are! You hear me?
After tossing the Mad Hatter aside, Turpin rummaged for clues through the nearest closet, which was packed to overflowing with cardboard hat boxes.
Wait a minute.
A disturbing vision flashed across his mind, of blank eyes and drooling lips, before slipping away again.
Damn blackouts. What the hell is wrong with me? Where'd he go? You're not getting off that easy.
Turpin wrenched the toilet seat from its moorings and viciously smacked the Hatter across the back of the head with it.
Tell me where I can find those kids, or I'm gonna give you brain damage with a friggin' toilet seat! How's that gonna look when they make the movie of your life, creep?
Turpin caught a glimpse of himself in the cracked bathroom mirror. His craggy face looked roughly hewn from crumbling stone, and his skin was dry and gray. Homicidal rage burned within his sunken eyes. The harsh fluorescent lights made his head hurt. Swollen veins throbbed beneath his skin. He looked as sick as he felt, like he was stewing in poison.
Bloodhaven! Bloodhaven!
Figures. Should have known it.
Turpin turned away from the Mad Hatter and headed for the door.
All roads lead to hell.
Mars. Despite the quarantine imposed on Earth, the Guardians had granted the Justice League a special dispensation to return the Martian Manhunter's body to his native planet.
John Jones was my friend. Always there. Always strong. Always reliable. John was someone I could confide in. Someone who understood what it was like to lose a world and find another. We'll all miss him. And pray for a resurrection.
Keystone City.
Well, gentlemen, convinced?
The Martian was an easy target. Hurt Superman, and perhaps I'll take you more seriously.
Say what you like, Luthor. Libra delivered for the human flame, and I'm next on the list. So no screwing this up for me.
So let me get this straight, Lex. You're saying if I hurt Superman, you'll join me?
Well, we'll see.
The meeting broke up shortly thereafter, after another of Libra's pretentious sermons on the inevitable triumph of evil. Luthor led an exodus of villains into the dismal parking lot behind the building. A highway overpass concealed the infamous assemblage as each departed in their own distinctive fashion. A chauffeured black Rolls-Royce waited for Luthor as he conferred with Vandal Savage.
Look at them. That preening snake oil salesman has opened the secret society's doors to dangerous Z-list wannabes. Even that reptile Savannah agrees that we have to make an alliance against Libra's ambitions. Can we count on you, Savage?
I've walked the earth since the morning of time. I've seen so many little men squandering their little lives on petty power struggles that bring meaning to otherwise futile existences. If he promises me an end to boredom, I'll take it.
The human flame watched as Luthor slammed the door of his limo shut before being driven away.
Ignore him, boss. Zillionaire suits like Luthor expect the world on a silver platter.
Even Luthor will come around when he sees what I do next. But I'm not the boss, Mike. You'll know all about it when the boss shows up.
Oh. Well, all I know is you're the guy who put the human flame back on the map after I lost all those years in prison. I owe you big time.
Yes. Why don't we go back inside and talk about, well, what you owe me?
Hall of Justice, Washington, D.C. The Justice League's morgue was 3 doors down from its infirmary.
It's still so hard to believe. John Jones is dead. Orion is dead. And the Justice League no longer has access to the instantaneous mind-to-mind contact John's telepathic skills provided.
The global superhuman community is on priority alert, Diana. Batman?
According to my sources, the secret society has taken credit for John's murder. It was an execution, organized crime style. Orion is something else, but I've asked the Flash to investigate some potential leads that could link the killings.
Sorry to interrupt. Guys, My superior officer, Alpha Lantern Kraken.
More members of the local crime-fighting club, Jordan?
She strode into the morgue as though she owned the place.
How much do these extracurricular distractions compromise your ability to protect this entire sector, I wonder? When did you last spend significant time on Heliopolis, Embrae, Avmora, or any of 1,000 other inhabited worlds under your jurisdiction?
Earth has a habit of attracting serious trouble, as you can see. The victim here is of celestial origin.
Then it is important that we work quickly before the body sublimes back to the source.
Kraken referred to the mythical realm from which the new gods supposedly drew their power, and to which they were said to return upon their deaths.
Unfortunately, this backwater planet lacks the technology to accurately determine the cause of a god's death.
He was shot, as evidenced by these holographic scans. Take a look. The internal trauma is consistent with the blast pattern of a bullet detonating inside Orion's skull. What kind of bullet remains to be seen, as it left no other trace of its passage.
X-ray him again, Lantern Kraken. You'll see.
Someone shot a god and left no exit wound? I think not.
I maintain he was shot. That's why I instructed one of your officers to re-examine the crime scene for a bullet. John Stewart is another valued member of our crime-fighting club.
You instructed Lantern Stewart 2814.2? On whose authority?
Sister.
I am not your sister. I am in charge of this investigation by order of the Guardians of the Universe who police countless worlds, including this one.
I don't remember voting them into the League.
Batman, guys, come on. Alpha Lantern Kraken is one of the best investigators in the Corps. I'm sure we can all work together.
This is a job for trained professionals. And I believe your duty shift is over, Jordan. We'll call you in the morning.